John, good morning. Prime Minister Carney dropped your name at the G7. Why don't you share with the Investor News audience why?
Yeah, so the G7 has a component to it that it's called the Critical Minerals Resilience and Production Alliance. And yesterday, Prime Minister Carney mentioned 13 projects with 8 countries under this partnership or under this sort of model with the G7. And First Phosphate have 2 of its projects in there with about 3 or 4 of the countries. So we had our mine and our phosphoric acid plant mentioned, together with the countries of Italy, the EU, and also Denmark.
We've received a number of phone calls about you being referenced, by the way, John. So, again, congratulations. And people are asking me, tell us more about the G7 Critical Minerals Production Alliance, because you are, of course, a recipient.
Yeah, so it's an alliance that means to bring together primarily the G7, but also by larger status the OECD around critical minerals to reduce the dependence obviously on China and to get critical minerals supply chains and advanced downstream products working throughout the G7. So when you're elevated to that level, you're really you're elevated to a level beyond the nation states, and it's sort of talking about the West. So, First Phosphate is now a prerogative of the G7.
Okay, so it's my understanding that the goal here is to reduce reliance on any single non G7 supplier to below 60% by 2030. And you have been prioritized. Can you tell us why you've been prioritized?
Yeah, so we have igneous phosphate and a downstream supply chain for the LFP, lithium iron phosphate battery industry. And if you remember, in October of 2025, when there was a spat between China and the USA, there were 3 things that were threatened. One was rare earths, 2 was microprocessors, but number 3 was the LFP battery supply chain. So the LFP battery supply chain is almost 100% based in Asia, mostly in China. So that's a real prerogative for the G7 to onshore that supply chain. First Phosphate has been beating the drum, mine to market strategy, starting with high purity igneous phosphate in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, Quebec, all the way down to the production of these, the LFP batteries that go into anything from energy storage systems, data centers, electric vehicles, drones, military equipment, and also robotics and factory automation. So it's a real key important point for the G7 to get that supply chain down to 60%. I mean, it's almost at 100% right now, sitting in China. So they're looking to First Phosphate as the solution to that. So when you step back and you think about that, Tracy, like, wow, what a prerogative, and what a great recognition for First Phosphate, but also what a lot of hard work we have ahead of ourselves, but also what a heck of a lot of support we have from the nation states. Denmark has come to the table with 275 million Canadian loan guarantee for the mine. That's almost half of the capex at the mine. The Italian government, through 3 of its entities, SACE, CDP, and Simvest, along with Mare Group, a large engineering group out of Milan, $5 billion market cap on the Milan Stock Exchange. They're all there for the phosphoric acid plant at Port Saguenay. We also had offtake agreements mentioned, 200,000 tons of the concentrate at the mine and 60,000 tons of the phosphoric acid at the phosphoric acid plant. These are definitive, these are bankable. So all of this came together, right? The political impetus, the expression of the need for this supply chain to be basically onshored in the West, the offtake agreements, and under the G7 Production Alliance, it's really the commitments of the nation states behind First Phosphate to get this project into reality as soon as possible.
Now, I'm certain everybody out there is going, whoa, John, First Phosphate. Who are these groups you're referencing? And did we just hear $275 million guarantee from Export and Investment Fund of Denmark? Tell us a little bit more about that specific part of the deal, if you don't mind. Just back you up a little bit.
Yeah, so the mine at Évian has a 275 million loan guarantee from the Export Credit Agency of Denmark, which is attached to their sovereign fund as well. So that will be for the supply of equipment to the mine. So that, already takes care of half of the capex at the mine.
Now, your news release did a brilliant job of breaking up all the different organizations, but if you could share a little bit more information about the Italian Export Credit Agency as well.
Yeah, so SACE is the Italian Export Credit Agency. It's similar to IFO. Obviously, it's going to support exportation of Italian products. So the engineering group is MER out of Milan. It's one of the largest engineering groups in Europe. Like I said, it's a $5 billion market cap on the Milan Stock Exchange. So they will be the engineers for the phosphoric acid plant at Port of Saguenay. And obviously behind that, they use a lot of Italian-made equipment for the facility. So obviously SACE, they have an interest in exporting, helping those Italian companies to export their products to Canada for the implementation of the phosphoric acid plant. So that's why SACE is at the table. But also we have the CDP, Cassa de Depositi Prestiti, which is basically an entity linked to the Italian Ministry of the Economy, and they can make equity investments, they can make non-dilutive investments as well into companies where they think that there's a national interest for Italy. The third one is Simest. Simest helps Italian companies export abroad. So together, that's kind of the trilogy that works, very closely and is also state-owned in many components of it, and that help the whole Italian system over there to be able to, be export ready and to develop projects in Italy and abroad. So we basically have, the entire power of the Danish state behind us and the Italian state behind us, and one of the largest engineering groups in Italy quoted on the Milan Stock Exchange behind the project, and all sitting behind the G7 Production Alliance. I mean, this is about as good as it will ever get for a critical minerals company and for a critical minerals project in North America. I think many people are just kind of sitting back and trying to understand what just happened yesterday. But think about First Phosphate and the onshoring of the LFP battery supply chain in the West. No longer Quebec story, no longer just Canada, no longer just North America, but the entire West, the entire G7, now becoming a prerogative of the G7.
Would you not say that this is a huge vote of confidence for the interest in North America about relying on their own LFP battery supply chain?
Yeah, and it's not only about North America anymore, it's really about North America and Europe. It's about the countries represented by the G7 and their need to really onshore this LFP battery supply chain. And like you said, they're trying to get some of these commodities from 100% dependence on China, like the LFP battery supply chain is, down to 60, and they're looking to First Phosphate to do that. They're looking at this company that was, just Quebec based, and then Canadian based, then it became talk of North America, and now it's the talk of, a pan-global alliance of G7 members to onshore this supply chain here in North America.
I think what's very important that I'm hearing was that the G7 has taken it very serious what China is able to do when they announced, in October 2025 that they were going to be threatening our supply chain for LFP batteries. And they're trying to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, when there were threats on the table in October, everyone heard the first one, and they kind of heard the second one, but they didn't hear the third one. The first one was rare earth materials. The second was computer chips, and then the third one was the LFP battery supply chain. And that's the one that First Phosphate's been focused on for 4 years. And we've been focused on that with a mine-to-market strategy, having known intuitively that one day the whole supply chain would be the issue, not just any one part of it.
So I think in reading this news release and talking to some of the interested parties in First Phosphate, they were talking about the vote of confidence coming from the Mayor Group. Can you explain that just a little bit more for our audience?
Yeah, so the Mayor Group is a leading European engineering group. It had been built on its own and also through a lot of mergers and acquisitions. It's now a $5 billion market cap. That's euros on the Milan Stock Exchange. So it has a lot of ability, to be able to deal and negotiate and to merge and to invest in projects. So what they'll tend to do is, in order to get their engineering services involved, they will invest in projects and they will help to make those engineering projects source from Italy, which gives them the ability to engage the state organizations of SACE, CDP, and CIMEST, because there's a component of export to it. And so it all comes together very synergistically and allows them to look at these projects abroad, help them to grow, and so they're helping them to grow through capital investment. They're helping them to grow through the final financing of them eventually, but also all the engineering work that goes into them, starting from the beginning to the end of these projects. So there will be Balestra, which is owned by Mare Group, will be our engineering firm for the phosphoric acid plant.
For those of you interested in finding out more about this most recent and significant G7 news release, please go to the following website. Thank you, John.
Thank you so much, Tracy.